adventure story of the United States. The growth of free institutions. Isolated as they were, many settlements governed themselves in town meetings. A new road should be built to my farm. A new schoolhouse is more important. Such meetings, where all might speak, held the seeds of America's democracy. Education for every child was a cornerstone of the colony's growth. The Boston Free Latin School, 1635, heralded America's public school system. Higher learning was not neglected. In 1636, near Boston, Harvard University was founded. Freedom of religion, unhappily, was interpreted by the Puritans of Massachusetts as obedience to their own sect. What did the poor fellow do? He disagreed with the parson's sermon. Many rebelled against such freedom. Among them, a young minister named Roger Williams. His arrest was ordered. On a winter night in 1635, Williams fled into the wilderness. "I'll start a settlement where all can worship as they please. Government must never interfere with a man's belief." With the help of friendly Indians, he founded the colony of Rhode Island. True freedom of religion was a guiding principle, too, of William Penn, a Quaker, who, in 1681, founded Pennsylvania. "Mr. Penn, you must have guns to deal with these savages." "There will be no guns in this colony. We shall do unto the red man as we would have him do unto us." Penn's Golden Rule Treaty with the Indians was never broken. At Philadelphia, Penn's City of Brotherly Love, the people enacted the Great Law. Religious freedom for all, right of the people to make their own laws, vocational instruction for all, prisons to be made into workshops. Note: freedom of religion was thought to apply to all branches or denominations of Christianity. However, there was no Islam or other non-Western religions in early America. In the 1700s, conflict between France and Britain had echoes in the New World. The French had settled along the St. Lawrence River and Great Lakes. About 1750, they began building forts from Lake Erie to the Ohio River, gateway to the west. England claimed this territory. The governor of Virginia decided to send a messenger to Fort Le Boeuf, warning the French, hands off. For this journey, across 300 miles of mountains and forests, a 21-year-old surveyor was chosen. "This is a dangerous mission, young man. Are you willing to undertake it?" "Gladly, sir." The messenger's name was George Washington. Washington completed his mission, but the French rejected the message he carried and occupied Fort Duquesne, where Pittsburgh now stands. In 1755, the British sent an army to take this fort. General Braddock: "It is a mistake to maintain military formation in these forests." "Perhaps, but my men have always fought this way." The commander was unfamiliar with wilderness combat. Washington acted as his guide. As Washington feared, the French and their Indian allies lay in ambush for Braddock's ranks. "Braddock has fallen! All is lost!" "All is not lost. Take to the trees. Fight as they do." Washington's woodland tactics helped to save the redcoats from complete destruction. 3 years later, another British army stormed Fort Mackenzie and captured it. In 1759, the great French bastion of Quebec was overthrown, and the British flag flew unchallenged from Canada to Florida and west to the Mississippi. Meanwhile, a different sort of victory had been won in New York City. "How dare this sheik criticize me, the governor? I'll have the editor arrested. What's his name?" "His name, my lord, is John Peter Zenger." "What have you to say in your defense, Mr. Zenger?" "Only this. The press must be free to print the truth, no matter whom it offends." Zenger was acquitted, and freedom of the press was established as a precious American heritage. Another freedom-loving editor was Benjamin Franklin. Born of a poor Boston family, he came to Philadelphia at 17, carrying all his possessions. "Mama, look at this odd creature in the street." He became a printer's apprentice. Soon he had his own printing shop, and the girl who had laughed at him, Deborah Reed, became Mrs. Ben Franklin. His Pennsylvania Gazette became a leading newspaper. "Strong words, Ben. Unite or die." "Perhaps, but the colonies must stand together." Most books were imported then from England. Few could afford them. Benjamin Franklin began publishing an almanac. Poor Richard, 1733. An almanac for the year of Christ, 1733. God helps them that help themselves. Diligence is the mother of good luck. Time is the stuff that life is made of. Poor Richard's homely sayings were quoted throughout the colonies. One stormy day. "You like to fly kites, Mr. Franklin? See that spark, my lad? That is electricity. Someday, men will control it." Word of this experiment spread even to Europe, while another kind of storm was gathering over the 13 colonies. In England, George III ascended the throne, 1760, to find his treasury drained by wars with France. New taxes were therefore imposed upon the colonies. Their trade with other nations was forbidden, and custom officials were authorized to search their homes in enforcement of regulations. "You've no right entering my house, especially in those muddy boots." "I'm only carrying out orders, ma'am." "Must the king's stamp be put on this receipt?" "So the Stamp Act decrees, but it can never be enforced." Sympathy for the colonies was widespread in England itself, voiced by the statesman William Pitt. "To the colonists, such searchers violate the immunity of an English home, where the king himself could not enter." The unpopular Stamp Act was repealed, but a new tax was substituted on tea. When the first tea-laden ship reached Boston, a group of colonists disguised themselves as Indians. "Let's see how the king's tea will mix with salt water. We'll teach them to tax us without even listening to us." To punish the Boston Tea Party, the king ordered the port of Boston closed. The aroused colonists sent representatives to a great protest meeting in Philadelphia, 1774. We must not be taxed without our consent. Right. No taxation without representation. Meantime, we'll buy no British goods. This gathering was the first Continental Congress. From Virginia came a fiery voice, that of a young burgess named Patrick Henry. Is life so dear as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? I know not what course others may take. But as for me, give me liberty or give me death. To enforce its decrees, the king's government stationed large numbers of troops in the colonies. Their presence was bitterly resented. In Massachusetts, a group of colonists collected a store of arms at Concord, near Boston. One night, in a Boston tavern. Another drink, mate? No more. We march on Concord early tomorrow. On Concord? The countryside must be warned. A Boston silversmith named Paul Revere galloped through the night towards Concord, 15 miles away. Hush, man! People are sleeping. Let them wake. The redcoats are coming. When the redcoats marched at dawn, the Minutemen, militia, were waiting at Concord Bridge. If they crossed the bridge, fire! Disperse, you rebels! A short but bitter skirmish followed, and the British retreated. Today, beside that peaceful stream, near the tombs of the fallen on both sides, are inscribed the lines of the poet Emerson. Here once the embattled farmer stood, and fired the shot heard round the world. Open conflict had begun. A second Continental Congress gathered, 1775, and appointed George Washington commander of the colonial volunteers. Under a great elm at Cambridge, outside Boston, our cause is just. In defense of the freedom which is our birthright, we have taken up arms. Early in 1776, a pamphlet called Common Sense appeared. Listen to what Tom Paine has written. Ye that oppose tyranny, stand forth for the rights of mankind and of the free and independent states of America. It voiced the thought in thousands of minds. Independence! In the spring of 1776, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia rose in the Continental Congress. I offer this resolution, that these united colonies are, and ought to be, free and independent states. Congress then appointed a committee of 5, including Benjamin Franklin, to follow Lee's resolution, with a Declaration of Independence. The actual task of writing this declaration was assigned to a 33-year-old scholar. Thomas Jefferson had studied the works of Voltaire, Locke, Descartes, and Aristotle. I shall draw from the wisdom of all men, but shall write an expression of the American mind. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Note, by inserting the all men are created equal line, Jefferson was making the point that the commoners, or working class men of America, were just as important as the king or the noblemen of Britain. On July 4th, 1776, representatives of the 13 colonies adopted The Declaration of Independence. From Philadelphia's town hall, the Liberty Bell pealed the tidings. A new nation had been born. England sent heavy reinforcements to subdue the rebellious colonists. Washington has been driven from New York. He has fled across the Delaware River. Remember Tom Paine's words. These are the times that try men's souls. On Christmas night, while his pursuers slept beside the ice-packed Delaware, Washington recrossed the river. My hands are freezing. Quiet, man. Your voice will carry. The bold move took the British by surprise. Their encampment at Trenton was overwhelmed, and the colonists took new heart. Summer 1777. A great British army under General Burgoyne moved from Canada into the Hudson Valley. It seemed certain to cut the colonies in two. But Burgoyne's progress was harassed at every step, and in October at Saratoga, "Hold your fire, men! They're surrendering!" I can't believe my eyes. Thousands of them. Men, this ought to turn the tide. At Saratoga, there flew, for the first time, a banner with its 13 stars and 13 stripes. Since then, a star for each new state has been added to the American flag. The surrender of Burgoyne's army was indeed the turning point of the Revolution. Shortly afterward, at the court of France, "Mr. Franklin, you may report to your Congress that it can count on my country's help." "Your Majesty, America will never forget this act of friendship." Nor would Americans ever forget the young French nobleman Lafayette, who had already joined their cause. Dark days still lay ahead. The winter found Washington's army in desperate straits at Valley Forge. "We have no supplies. We're starving. I'm going back to my farm." "That's no way to talk. Look at Washington." It was the darkness that precedes the dawn. Washington's inspiration held his troops together. Help came from France, and finally, the bulk of the British army was trapped by American and French forces under Washington and Lafayette at Yorktown in Virginia. There, on October 19th, 1781, the British General Cornwallis surrendered. America's fight for its freedom was over. Across the sea, George III voiced the sentiments of both sides. "It is my earnest hope that religion, language, interest, and affection may prove a bond of permanent union between our two countries." The colonies were now free states, but under their loose confederation, they began to act like separate nations, jealous of one another, quarreling over boundaries, issuing their own money. "You can't bring potatoes from New Jersey to New York without paying duty." "Why not? We fought together. Why can't we trade together?" "I tell you, the states must have a stronger organization." "We need a central authority to settle disputes." "Business is at a standstill." "Paper money won't fill my market basket." "People can't pay their debts." It looked as if the new nation were already falling apart. Among these troubles, one bright event gleamed. The Northwest Territory, in which several states claimed disputed lands, was turned over by their common consent to the country as a whole. Thus, the way was opened for a great migration westward. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787 forbade slavery in the territory and pledged religious freedom and education for all. But elsewhere, the quarrels among the states were growing worse and worse. At the urging of Washington, then in retirement, a convention gathered in Philadelphia, 1787, to write a new constitution. Its start was stormy. Why should your state be equal with mine, which is 5 times as big? Yes, but mine produces 5 times the goods that yours does. Gentlemen, gentlemen. After weeks of angry debate, the 84-year-old Benjamin Franklin rose. When the planks of a table do not fit, the carpenter takes a little from both sides. In like manner, both sides here must part with some of their demands. It was Franklin's last great service. He died soon afterwards, mourned by Old World and New. Compromises were reached. For instance, each state was granted representation in the lower house of Congress on the basis of population. In the upper house or Senate, each state would have 2 representatives. At the end of 4 months, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. To ourselves and our posterity means to ourselves and our dependents, or children. There was no promise of a certain number of immigrants each year, or any at all. The Constitution took effect in 1789, but not all citizens were satisfied. It says that Congress shall make the laws, that the President shall enforce them, that the Supreme Court shall act as a check on both. Thus, we need not fear a concentration of power. Nevertheless, the people's rights require greater action. 2 years later, 10 amendments, drafted by James Madison, were added. These were known as the Bill of Rights. Among other things, they guaranteed freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, sanctity of the home. Unanimously elected first president was a man already known as the father of his country. In New York, 1789, I do solemnly swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. Hooray for George Washington! First in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his countrymen. Alexander Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, put the young nation on a sound financial basis. He founded the Federalist Party, which believed in strong central government. Thomas Jefferson became Secretary of State, headed the opposition party, which favored division of authority among the states. These 2 political divisions have their echoes in the Republican and Democratic parties of today. Now began a great movement of population across the Allegheny Mountains into the Northwest Territory. Farther south, people pushed westward into Tennessee and Kentucky, where the great woodsman Daniel Boone had already founded settlements. This looks like a good place to build our first home, Mary. Aye, John, if we'll be welcome. Welcome that you are, my friends. You must be mighty proud of this settlement, Daniel. It's getting a little too crowded. I'm moving farther west, where a man has elbow room. Thus did the new nation set the pattern of its future. A government answerable to the people. Two parties, the one a constant check on the other. Protection of individual rights. Opportunity for all those willing to work for it, especially in the opening West. After serving 2 terms, 8 years, George Washington refused the third and retired to his home, Mount Vernon. There, as the 18th century came to a close, he died within sight of a new city rising beside the Potomac River. It was to be the nation's capital, Washington. To this new capital, then little more than a village, there came in 1801 a new president. Look, he's on foot. They say he refused a carriage. He's dressed in homespun, too. Thomas Jefferson is truly a man of the people. Yours is a regime of great simplicity, President Jefferson. So it should be. All the country needs is a wise and frugal government, which shall restrain men from injuring one another, and shall leave them otherwise free to regulate their own pursuits. During Jefferson's administration, the importation of slaves from Africa was banned. Your ship may no longer enter this harbor. I'm glad this traffic in human beings has ended. An event that was to have great effect on the nation's growth took place on the Hudson River. There she is, Robert Fulton's steamboat. Humph! Fulton's Folly, I call it. Folly nothing! Look at her go! Perhaps Jefferson's greatest achievement was the purchase from Napoleon Bonaparte of the Louisiana Territory, which had been ceded to France by Spain. It doubled the country's size. 2 bold woodsmen, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, were sent by Jefferson to explore this almost unknown land. With an Indian girl as their guide, they pushed even farther across the Rocky Mountains to the west coast. There it lies, the Pacific. What a glorious sight! Our people little dream what a vast land this is. Jefferson's second term was marked, unhappily, by a new quarrel with England. It grew worse under his successor, James Madison. The main cause of this quarrel was England's insistence on the right to search American ships for British deserters. True, there were many such deserters, but frequently American sailors were seized. You can't do this. I'm a free citizen. That's what you say. Now come along. Popular resentment against this practice led, in 1812, to a declaration of war, a war which neither side really wanted. British troops from Canada won a series of successes on land, but at sea, surprisingly, America's new Navy scored a number of victories, the most famous being that of the frigate Constitution over the Guerriere. Good old Constitution, she has sides of iron. Old Ironsides is still preserved as a national shrine. Meanwhile, British forces occupied Washington, then moved upon Baltimore. There, the night-long battle was watched by a young poet, Francis Scott Key. I see a flag. It's ours. We've won. On an old envelope, Key scribbled the words of the Star-Spangled Banner, now America's national anthem. 'Tis the Star-Spangled Banner, oh, long may it wave. The greatest battle of the war was fought at New Orleans, where the backwoods riflemen of Andrew Jackson shattered a British invasion army. Our boys may not know war, General Jackson, but they certainly know how to shoot. Ironically, the victory came 2 weeks after a peace treaty had been signed at Ghent, Belgium, in 1814. The news had not yet crossed the ocean. The next president, James Monroe, took his oath in front of a partly destroyed Capitol. As the foundations of this capital withstood war, so shall this nation continue to stand. With peace restored, the new administration was hailed as the era of good feeling. Meanwhile, in South and Central America, new republics had declared their independence from Spain, but an alliance of European rulers now sought to regain control over them. President Monroe made a momentous statement to Congress. We should consider any attempt by the European powers to extend their system to this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety. England supported his stand, and the Monroe Doctrine has ever since guaranteed the freedom of the American republics. Westward migration received fresh impetus with the building of a great national road across the forest-clad Alleghenies. By 1825, it stretched from Maryland to the Mississippi. Then move your family westward to the state of Illinois. In that state of Illinois, a village of cabins was rising. Its name would be Chicago. The settling of the West brought new states into the Union and also brought to a head the ugly question of slavery. Should it be permitted in the new states? Slavery was opposed by many people throughout the nation, but it was generally defended in the agricultural South as an economic necessity, especially after the invention of the cotton gin had made vast cotton fields the South's chief source of income. When Missouri sought admission to the Union as a slave state, a long, bitter debate took place in Congress. Henry Clay, known as the Great Compromiser, rose. Let Missouri and the lands to the south come in as slave states. In the rest of the Western Territory, let slavery be banned forever. It was so agreed. This was the Missouri Compromise, which many feared was but a postponement of the issue. Time proved them right. Regardless of internal differences, the whole country cheered the return visit of an aging warrior for freedom. Marquis de Lafayette, around you are men who fought beside you, who now ask God's blessing on you and yours forever. The following year, 1825, Eastern America and the growing West were linked by a mighty project, the Erie Canal, joining the Hudson River with the Great Lakes, 363 miles away. Here's the plow you ordered from New York, and I have a shipment of wheat for the city. 5 years later, a still stronger link was forged when an invention from England was tried out near Baltimore. What in the world is that? That's Peter Cooper's Tom Thumb. Runs faster than a horse. Meanwhile, the country elected a new president, Andrew Jackson, the first to come from a humble, backwoods background. Hooray for the hero of New Orleans! Hooray for Old Hickory! Jackson undertook a sweeping reform of the banking system, which he believed permitted a few men to control the country's money supply. It was a popular move, as this cartoon of the day indicated. Jackson's hardest fight was to save the Union itself. The Southern states objected strongly to a heavy duty imposed by Congress on imported goods as protection for Northern industries. South Carolina threatened to leave the Union. In a great debate, Senator Hayne of the rebellious state was answered by Daniel Webster. States' liberties come before the Union. No, not the liberty first and Union afterwards, but liberty and Union, now and forever, one and inseparable. All union, it must be preserved. Jackson's firmness held the states together. Later, a compromise lowered the duty. From 1840 on, hundreds of thousands of people started coming from Europe to the United States. Opportunity in the West beckoned to them. Famine and unrest at home spurred them on. From many nations they came, people of many different beliefs, religious and political. Thus, America was called the melting pot. Note, the melting pot originally drew almost exclusively from Western and Northern European countries, including England, Ireland, and Germany. Western expansion soon collided with British Canada to the north, with Mexico to the south. By a treaty with Canada in 1846, the disputed Oregon Territory was equally divided. The argument with Mexico did not end so peacefully. The newest American state, Texas, had once been part of Mexico, but had declared itself independent. Boundary quarrels followed, shots were fired, and in 1846, Congress declared war. It was widely opposed in the United States. American troops marched upon Mexico City, and its fall in 1847 ended the short, unpopular war. Look, what wonderful buildings! Those are the halls of Montezuma. The Mexican Peace Treaty ceded to the United States the entire California and New Mexico territory. Many Americans had already settled there, and Mexico was fully paid for the land. In 1848, at Sutter's Mill in California, "Hello, what's this yellow stuff? Man, that's gold!" The discovery brought thousands of gold seekers from all over the country and from Europe to California. "We're rich. We'll live like kings in London and Paris." Not me. I'm going to buy a farm right here with orange groves and grapevines. A few found riches. Most found only hardship and disappointment. But those who remained to till California's fertile soil found its real wealth. Note, this is the second of 4 parts of The Story of America. Be sure to watch for part 3, which covers the Civil War and the Industrial Revolution.